Video game adaptations haven't always had the best track record. For years, adaptations felt like cheap cash-ins or bargain bin garbage. But lately, it seems like every adaptation is kind of a banger. Awesome kids movies, prestige TV dramas. There's basically something for everyone. So, how did we go from this to this?
I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
The first crossovers between games and movies were much closer to product placements than adaptations. There were a few cartoons for kids, but there wasn't anything aiming for a wider audience. That changed with the release of the first live-action film based on a video game, Super Mario Bros. When it came out in 1993, Mario was already a household name. And the movie seemed like it had all the makings of a smash hit. It had a star-studded cast, with actors like Dennis Hopper and Bob Hoskins. The script was inspired by Ghostbusters. It even had a $48 million budget. But audiences weren't convinced. Critics called it one of the worst movies of 1993. The worst part is that since it was the first video game movie anyone had ever seen, people started to assume that any movie based on a game would be bad. And they weren't wrong.
You and Larry will join us for consumption of mass quantities this weekend. We will ignite our new flame pit and char some mammal flesh for you.
That sounds like fun.
Studios wanted to cash in on the popularity of video games, but they ignored why people liked these games in the first place. Vibrant game worlds became drab and lifeless. Characters didn't look anything like their video game counterparts. Plus, the stories were a mess. After a few more box office bombs, video game movies did start to get better. Video game movies started to look and feel like the games they were adapting. They weren't masterpieces by any means, but some of them were pretty entertaining. But we were still waiting on a movie that tapped into the true potential of video games. A hero that could show the world just how good video game stories could be. The Sonic the Hedgehog movie got off to a rocky start. It was stuck in development hell for years. And when the movie was finally revealed, there was a ton of backlash. The movie was delayed so that Sonic could get a full redesign. But when it was finally released, it actually wound up being pretty good. It told a simple, fun story. Sonic actually felt like Sonic, and Jim Carrey stole the show as Dr. Robotnik. It felt like video game movies were finally moving in the right direction, especially after the release of a new Super Mario Bros. Movie that was actually faithful to the games. But there was still something missing. Have you noticed that Sonic and the Mario movie basically tell the same story? The hero is dissatisfied with their life. They get transported to a strange new world, where they get caught up in the schemes of an evil villain. After a temporary defeat, and with a little help from a friend, they defeat the villain and discover their true potential as a hero. The newest video game movies are fun, but they're also formulaic. If you're looking for the best video game adaptations, you'll want to try a smaller screen. With a few notable exceptions, hi Avengers Endgame, movies usually run for about 2 hours. But the average video game is significantly longer. Sometimes they're much, much longer. Even though a lot of time is spent battling enemies and finishing side quests, movies don't have enough time to cover video game stories, but TV shows do. A TV series can spread a story across multiple episodes and even multiple seasons. They have time to focus on the side characters and subplots that make game stories shine. And while kids have been getting video game shows for a long time, studios are finally starting to make shows for adults. When Castlevania debuted in 2017, an adult animated series based on a video game seemed like a risky proposition. But it wound up being a huge hit, with both critics and general audiences. After Castlevania found mainstream success, there were more video game adaptations ready to follow in its footsteps. And those series connected with mainstream audiences too. Okay, so The Witcher is technically based on a popular book series, but it still brought an iconic video game character to life. Arcane expanded on the backstories of League of Legends champions. And in the process, they created a story that anyone could enjoy. But the best showcast of video game storytelling, so far anyway, has to be The Last of Us. The game is widely considered a masterpiece. It's even been described as the greatest story ever told in video games. The TV show managed to perfectly recreate the game's most heart-wrenching moments, and audiences loved it. After a long run of crappy and formulaic movies, people finally understood how powerful the best video game stories could be. Video game adaptations have had a long and bumpy journey. For a long time, most video game movies were borderline unwatchable. Even when movies started to get better, it felt like something was missing. It was tough to condense massive video games into 2-hour movies. TV adaptations gave video games room to breathe, and the result was magic. Now that people know video games have incredible stories, the only thing left to do is tell more of them. Maybe the perfect video game movie will come along someday, but in the meantime, we've got plenty of TV shows to binge.